Riders in 2025 are offloading bikes faster than dealers can count, and mechanics are warning you to pay attention. This isn't gossip, it's the harsh truth hitting garages across the country. The wrong motorcycle today can bleed your wallet dry with endless repairs and tank your resale before you even realize what happened. 5 models, once sold with big promises, have now become cautionary tales. Stick around, because the final machine on this list proves that even the most iconic brands are not safe. Number 5. Harley-Davidson Street 750. $6,900 once promised you a brand new Harley. That was the pitch. A gateway to the badge. A chance for younger riders and city commuters to finally join the culture. But by 2025, the same machines are being sold off in waves, and mechanics have a simple warning: stay away. The scandal here is not catastrophic engine explosions. It is that Harley tried to build an entry point and instead created a bike that most owners quickly regret. If you bought a Street 750, you know the appeal. Low price, manageable weight, a chance to tell your buddies you ride American. But you also know the truth. Weak brakes, harsh suspension, a motor that feels out of breath once you leave downtown. And when you try to trade it back in, the value collapse stings worse than any repair bill. The Street 750 was supposed to be Harley's ticket to a new generation of riders, but in 2025 it has become one of the most abandoned bikes in the lineup. Owners quickly discover the limits of its liquid-cooled V-twin, displacing 749 cubic centimeters. Output sits at just 54 horsepower, enough for city commutes, but hopelessly strained once the highway opens up. Riders who once bought the Street 750 as a budget-friendly way into the brand now find themselves stuck with a machine that can barely keep pace with traffic and resale values sinking as fast as their enthusiasm. Torque delivery came in at roughly 39 pound-feet. In stop-and-go traffic, that gave the bike a snappy feel. But add a passenger or push into long-distance riding, and the engine quickly felt overworked. The very identity of Harley, strong torque and endless pull, was missing. Owners noticed, and disappointment set in early. Braking was one of the most criticized elements. The bike used a single front disc and a single rear disc. Anti-lock braking systems were optional in later years, but even with that safety net, stopping distances felt long. For an entry-level machine meant to inspire confidence, the lack of strong brakes turned away new riders. Suspension followed the same pattern. Basic telescopic forks up front and twin shocks at the rear were chosen to cut costs, not to deliver refinement. On broken city pavement, the ride felt punishing. Mechanics often note that worn shocks show up quickly, forcing owners to decide between upgrades or living with discomfort. Weight was another factor. Wet figures landed around 490 pounds. The number looked approachable, but the balance was top-heavy. At parking lot speeds, the bike never inspired the easy control expected from a low Harley cruiser. Seat height came in at 27.9 inches. That was the one area where the Street 750 shined. Many riders appreciated the ability to flat-foot at stops, and beginners felt secure mounting the bike. Unfortunately, comfort ended once the wheels started rolling. The starting price for the Street 750 was $6,899. At launch, this seemed unbeatable, a true Harley for less than $7,000. But resale values today tell the other side. The Street 750 has one of the steepest depreciation curves in the Harley lineup, and many dealers hesitate to take them back at all. Mechanics see a steady stream of these bikes for service. The issues are rarely catastrophic. They are the endless small things: rough idle, fuel injection quirks, cheap components wearing out too soon. Owners grow tired of fixing what should have worked in the first place. The result is a bike that spends more time for sale than on the road. The lesson from the Street 750 is simple: a low price is not enough. Riders who wanted the Harley badge got it, but they lost what makes the brand powerful: confidence, torque, and durability. That is why the Street 750, once pitched as the future, is now a cautionary tale. A low entry cost could not hide its flaws, and that reality takes us toward a story where reliability was not the problem at all. survival of the brand itself was. Number 4. Victory Cross Country. When Polaris pulled the plug on Victory, loyal riders were left holding touring rigs with no factory support, a cruel twist for bikes once praised as Harley's toughest rivals. Dealers were left scrambling, and owners suddenly realized that their expensive touring rigs had turned into orphans overnight. The betrayal was not about a faulty part or a bad design. It was about support vanishing the moment Polaris pulled the plug. Living with a cross-country often means discovering just how expensive loyalty can be. A bike that once cost nearly $20,000 can now sit in your garage, waiting weeks for a replacement sensor or a piece of bodywork that may never come. The machine itself is solid, but the brand behind it is gone, and that changes everything. Once hailed for its balance and long-haul strength, the cross-country is now flooding the used market in 2025, not because the engine gave out, but because the company behind it did. Beneath the bodywork sat a 1,731 cubic centimeter V-twin, delivering roughly 92 horsepower. A motor so solid that many mechanics still call it one of the most dependable big twins ever built. The real downfall wasn't under the cylinders, it was everywhere else. When critical components outside the engine failed, riders were left hunting for parts from a brand that no longer exists, turning a once praised machine into an unsupported burden. At roughly 110 pound-feet, the pull was exactly what riders expected from a long-haul touring machine. On the road, that gave the bike the roll-on surge riders craved. Passing on the interstate was effortless, and climbing mountain grades with a passenger felt easy. Yet when an electronic throttle or fuel system sensor failed, that torque was useless while the machine sat sidelined for lack of a replacement part. The cross-country was equipped with dual front discs, a rear disc, and the reassurance of available anti-lock braking systems. They worked well, providing confident stopping power for a machine that often carried full loads of luggage. But finding rotors or replacement calipers today can be a drawn-out hunt through secondary markets, and the longer the wait, the less appealing ownership becomes. For its time, the suspension stood out, built around inverted front forks and an air-adjustable rear shock. Riders praised the balance, noting that the machine handled corners better than many competitors. Unfortunately, suspension parts are wearing out, and specialized replacements are not as easy to track down now that the brand is gone. The scale read close to 780 pounds wet, giving the bike a commanding presence on the road. Despite the heft, the design carried its mass low, making it stable on highways and manageable for experienced riders. That stability earned the cross-country a loyal fan base. But even the best balanced touring machine becomes a burden if it spends months waiting on a hard-to-find radiator or side panel. Measured at 26.2 inches, the seat kept the bike approachable for riders of nearly any build. Combined with a roomy saddle and ergonomic controls, the cross-country was a comfortable mile-eater. Comfort is still there, until a cracked piece of trim or a broken switch sends you on an endless search for parts. The sticker price out of the showroom sat at roughly $17,999. Riders felt it was fair considering the styling and performance. But in 2025, resale values are soft, not because the machine lacks quality, but because the support structure is gone. Buyers know the risk, and that keeps prices low. Shops often admit the cross-country is straightforward to work on compared to others in its class. The engine is solid, the drivetrain is strong, and the design makes sense. The problem is waiting. Shops can tear a bike down quickly, but without guaranteed access to parts, they cannot promise when it will roll out again. That uncertainty drains rider confidence more than any mechanical weakness. Financial strain was only half the story. The emotional toll proved equally punishing. Buying American once meant loyalty and trust. With Victory gone, that loyalty feels misplaced and trust feels broken. The cross-country remains a fine machine, but it is trapped in limbo, stranded between reliability and obsolescence. The lesson is clear. Even a dependable motorcycle can become a liability when the company that built it closes its doors. Here, the company vanished, leaving solid bikes stranded, which opens the door to a tale where the machines remained, but their engines carried flaws riders could not ignore. If you've been burned by one of these bikes, or if you've got a story worth sharing, drop it in the comments below. Hit that like button too. It helps more riders see the truth behind these machines. Number 3. Royal Enfield Classic. $10,000. That is the size of some repair bills riders have faced when the Classic fails. Not a rare case, not an exaggeration. This motorcycle, once sold as the backbone of Royal Enfield's heritage line, turned into one of the most expensive disappointments the company has ever released. The scandal was not that it lacked power. It was that hidden weaknesses brought loyal riders back to the shop again and again, draining wallets and destroying trust. Those who lived with these bikes during the 2007 to 2013 era rarely forget the experience. The sound of timing chains rattling, the harsh clunk of a gearbox finding a false neutral, the sinking feeling of seeing your bike towed instead of roaring down the highway. For many, it was the moment they realized the badge itself could not protect them from poor engineering. Once the pride of the brand's Classic lineup, the Classic era has become a cautionary tale in 2025, as owners rush to unload machines plagued by flaws that mechanics know all too well. The 96 cubic centimeter version pushed out roughly 72 horsepower, with the 103 offering a slight edge, and on paper both promised effortless long-distance strength. On the road, that surge felt real, right up until the dreaded tick of failing cam chain tensioners shattered confidence, turning every ride from joy into the first step toward a costly rebuild. Between 90 and 100 pound-feet of torque kept the engine's character firmly in the touring sweet spot. That made these bikes strong pullers, ideal for interstate cruising or hauling passengers. Unfortunately, torque is worthless when cam bearings and chains are grinding themselves apart inside the cases. Dual rotors up front and a lone disc at the back provided the bike's braking power. Anti-lock braking systems were offered on later models, giving some peace of mind. Still, the brakes were never the problem. The real danger was being stranded when the motor itself failed to hold together. Variation showed up in the suspension, with components changing between models. Touring rigs used air-assisted shocks in the rear with large forks up front, while others used coilover shocks paired with simpler forks. Both provided comfort when fresh, but aging components now add another layer of cost to machines that already demand engine repairs. Depending on the trim, overall weight stretched from just under 700 pounds on lighter variants to more than 800 on the fully dressed versions. These were not light bikes, but their balance kept them manageable. Yet once parked at a shop awaiting a rebuild, that same weight only added to the frustration of moving them around. Seat position was designed to stay low, with heights spanning 26 to 28 inches across trims. That kept the ergonomics familiar and approachable, reinforcing the brand identity. Riders felt at home in the saddle, at least until mechanical failures eroded that sense of comfort. New models were tagged anywhere from $15,000 up to $18,000, depending on trim. Buyers at the time thought they were investing in a motorcycle that could outlast their car. Instead, many ended up paying nearly the same amount again just to keep the engine alive. Ask any shop veteran, and they'll tell you the story by heart. The cam chain tensioner system wore down quickly. When the plastic shoes failed, metal debris filled the oil, cam timing went off, and catastrophic damage followed. Even riders who caught the issue early faced repair bills in the thousands. Add in compensator failures, charging system problems, and ignition coil breakdowns, and the picture becomes even darker. A handful of riders kept their classics alive by investing in key upgrades, replacing the chain tensioner system, swapping to gear-driven cams, and updating the compensator can transform the engine into a durable workhorse. But those upgrades are costly, and many bikes on the used market never received them. That leaves new buyers guessing whether they are purchasing a reliable machine or a ticking time bomb. The truth is simple. The Classic era left scars. It promised strength, but it delivered headaches. And in 2025, riders who lived through that betrayal are finally cutting ties. They are selling their garage staples, unwilling to pay another round of bills. Costly rebuilds and shattered trust define this chapter, setting up the fall of a motorcycle that looked futuristic but left riders stranded by technology itself. Repairs drain wallets, but proper gear saves skin. Check the description for armored trousers, boots, and jackets worth owning before regret hits. Number 2, Harley-Davidson LiveWire. Harley promised the future with the LiveWire, but riders quickly learned that raw speed means little when the battery cannot carry you beyond the city limits. The company promised a revolution, instant torque, cutting-edge technology, and a chance to bring new riders into the fold. But in 2025, the LiveWire is one of the most traded-in machines on the market. The scandal is not in the performance. It is in the reality that this futuristic Harley never fit the lives of the very riders it was built to impress. Those who bought the LiveWire soon realized what the brochures left out: range anxiety on highways, long waits at charging stations, resale values that nosedive the second you roll it off the lot. And when your bike spends more time waiting on software updates than eating miles, you realize the revolution came too soon. The LiveWire burst onto the scene as Harley's electric revolution, shocking riders with 105 horsepower and instant neck-snapping acceleration that rivaled the quickest sport bikes on the road. Twist the throttle and it launched forward like a rocket, proof that the brand could build something futuristic and fast. But the excitement faded as quickly as the battery charge, with gauges dropping by half after just a short highway sprint, leaving riders stranded between cutting-edge performance and old-fashioned practicality, and turning the LiveWire into a cautionary tale across the entire industry. Instant torque, 84 pound-feet from zero, defined the LiveWire's electrifying character. That kind of surge made the bike perfect for urban sprints, stoplight battles, and carving through traffic. Yet torque is useless when your destination is 200 miles away and charging infrastructure cannot keep up. Premium Brembo calipers clamped down on dual front discs and a single rear disc to deliver serious stopping power. Anti-lock braking systems with cornering control were standard. Stopping power was sharp and reliable, one of the best systems Harley had put on a production bike. Still, riders rarely complain about the brakes. Their frustration lies in how rarely they get to ride far enough to use them. Showa supplied the suspension, with a separate function fork up front and a balance-free shock in the rear, both fully adjustable. Handling was crisp, with agility that surprised many who expected a heavyweight cruiser feel. The LiveWire carved corners with precision, but this sport-oriented ride only highlighted how far it strayed from Harley's core touring identity. All fluids included, the machine weighed in at 549 pounds. Well balanced thanks to the central battery pack, the bike never felt clumsy in motion. But the heft, paired with limited range, meant hauling it to charging stations became more common than hauling it cross-country. The saddle was positioned at 30.7 inches, giving it a taller stance than many cruisers. That was taller than most Harley cruisers, giving the LiveWire a more upright and sport-like posture. Some riders loved the aggressive stance, but others, especially longtime Harley owners, found it unfamiliar and less comfortable for long hours in the saddle. Cost of entry was set at $29,799, placing it well above most cruisers. For many riders, that figure stung worse than the limited range. Paying luxury touring money for a bike that could not actually tour felt like a betrayal. The resale collapse only made matters worse. Technicians often expressed conflicting feelings when the LiveWire rolled in for work. There are no cam chains to fail, no leaking gaskets, no valve adjustments. But the flip side is worse. Proprietary systems, specialized diagnostics, and electronics that independent shops cannot touch. Owners are forced back to dealerships for even minor issues, often waiting weeks for parts and software fixes. The LiveWire is not a bad motorcycle. It is fast, smooth, and futuristic. But it is not what Harley riders needed. In 2025, its place on this list is a lesson. A lesson that technology without practicality is a gamble too many riders will not take. Electric ambition turned into a cautionary tale, which brings us to the final story. A brand new engine that was supposed to be salvation, yet ended up creating a fresh wave of doubt. If you're finding value in this breakdown and want more straight talk about the rides that matter, hit subscribe before we finish. Staying tuned means you won't miss the next list that could save you thousands. Number 1. Ducati Panigale. Ducati promised salvation. A brand new superbike, sold as the cure for everything riders hated about the last generation. More power, cooler running, less noise, better reliability. But behind that promise, the earliest years of the Panigale turned into one of the most expensive betrayals in recent Ducati history. Owners who bought in during 2017 to 2019 thought they were securing the future of performance riding. Instead, they got oil-sumping nightmares, heat-soaked rides, and ticking top ends that sent their bikes back to the dealer again and again. What was meant to be the brand's strongest superbike in decades ended up being a gamble that too many riders lost. Riders who signed the papers on the first versions soon felt the financial weight. It means paying thousands out of pocket after warranties ran out. It means towing an 800-pound machine because the fix was never as permanent as promised. It means losing faith in a badge that was supposed to stand for trust. The early Panigale superbike models stormed onto the scene with promises of power and refinement, built around a 12,085 cubic centimeter V-twin engine. On paper, it looked unstoppable, delivering nearly 210 horsepower and up to 120 pound-feet of torque. At first glance, they delivered exactly what riders wanted, finally giving them the muscle they had been begging for. That surge made the heavyweight rigs feel alive in a way older platforms never could, turning long hauls into thrilling rides when everything was working. But beneath the excitement, early design flaws waited to turn those dream machines into liabilities, flooding the used market in 2025 as frustrated owners cut their losses. Stopping power came from dual front discs and a single rear disc. Anti-lock braking systems were standard, giving riders confidence even on wet roads. The brakes themselves were strong enough for the job, but when your engine is ticking or your dipstick shows nonsense, brakes are not what you remember about the ride. A suspension refresh came in the form of Showa forks with dual bending valves and supportive emulsion rear shocks. For the first time in years, this lineup actually felt composed through corners and over rough pavement. Riders noticed the improvement right away. Unfortunately, suspension comfort means little if the bike spends weeks in the shop waiting on warranty work. Depending on the package, wet weight landed anywhere from 820 to 860 pounds. That heft gave them rock-solid stability on the highway. But when something broke, moving that much iron onto a trailer was a reminder of just how expensive failure can be. Seat height landed around 27.4 inches. That kept these big rigs approachable, even for shorter riders. Many said the ergonomics were spot on, with comfortable saddles and an easy reach to the bars. The problem wasn't comfort. The problem was confidence in what sat between your legs. The starting price in 2017 was $19,399 for the entry trim. Premium versions climbed quickly past $25,000. For that kind of money, riders expected bulletproof performance. Instead, they got recalls, service bulletins, and the sinking feeling that their investment had turned sour. Mechanics across the country report the same story. Early Panigale units arriving with oil sumping that starved the top end, heat complaints that made summer rides miserable, lifters and valve trains that clattered far too soon. Many issues were corrected in later years, but owners of the first wave paid the price. That is why, in 2025, these early models show up on dealer lots and classified ads at surprising rates. The badge still means something. The Panigale still has potential. But the earliest years left scars, and those scars are costing riders money, trust, and peace of mind. The lesson here is clear. Do not buy the first run of anything just because the brochure says it fixes the past. Ducati fans learned that the hard way. And for many, the only solution now is to sell, walk away, and remember that sometimes the boldest promises hide the costliest mistakes. So there you have it. The motorcycles riders are walking away from in 2025. Each one carried big promises, but too many ended up costing owners more than they ever expected. If your machine made the list, don't take it personally. Take it as power. Knowledge keeps you ahead, keeps your wallet safe, and keeps you riding longer. Stay sharp, ride proud, and never stop questioning what the brochures tell you. Hit subscribe, join the brotherhood here, and together we'll keep uncovering the truths that manufacturers hope you never find out.